Hi there, my name is Karen Welding, and I am so excited to have you join me on this training. So the first thing I'm going to do, full disclosure here, when I was at school, so through primary and particularly in secondary, I absolutely hated maths. I hated everything about it. I hated how it made me feel. I used to dread the lessons. I think I came across maybe like one teacher in secondary that I could just about tolerate his lessons. And I couldn't wait to finish learning about maths or having to do maths at the end of when I took my exams at sort of 15, 16 years old. So I just could never, ever have imagined that this would be my job in the future. You could have said to me, look, Karen, you're going to be like an astronaut and discover new planets in the solar system. And I would have been like, yeah, that's more likely than me being a maths consultant and spending all day, every day, talking about maths, training wonderful people like you. So I hope already there is a bit of a surprise there, because the short version of a long story is, I failed my exams at 15. I had to resit them and just about scraped through so I could continue with my education. And I went to train as a teacher. I spent 4 years training as a teacher. Don't even remember having many, if any, inputs on teaching maths. That is very worrying. But anyway, got my first job as a teacher around about 22 years old, and hid in the early years and key stage 1 thinking, well, the maths won't be too hard, so at least I'll know more than the kids. Always did my very, very best, because I never wanted anyone to feel like I had. I was desperate that I wanted those children to have positive attitudes and not be scared. So I worked really hard, but it turns out that, of course, you don't have the tools to teach it any differently than you were taught. So that is a big problem. And I'll come to that in a little while in this introduction. So roll forward 10 years. I'm 32 years old. I have hidden in key stage 1 and early years, doing my best, but turns out not doing a great job. And I'm in year 4, and that is relevant because, one, I was teaching the year 1s. The same classes I taught as year 1s were now year 4s, and I caught them up. And one thing I'll share with you out of many things was understanding how bonds of 10 work is the basis for all parts of calculation. So, for example, understanding that 6, you need 4 more to make 10, 8 and 2 and so forth. And we're always putting so much focus on that with our 5 and 6-year-olds particularly. And I met these year 4s, so they were 8 and 9, and the majority of them could not recall or use their bonds of 10. And I thought, oh my goodness, I spent so long on this when they were young, and they haven't got this at their fingertips. It would be like not knowing how to hold a pencil. You think, how are you going to teach writing if they can't hold a pencil? It was literally that fundamental. So I went on some training. And I have to say, for the first time in my life, things were said on this training that made me realize something that I never thought was possible. And that was that it wasn't me. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't incapable of learning maths. And that had never occurred to me. There was just people who could do maths and people who couldn't. And I was somebody who couldn't. End of. Didn't even question it. And there's lots of reasons for that as well. But that course made me think, oh my goodness, maybe it isn't me. Maybe I can learn. I don't know the stuff now, but I can learn it. And it isn't maths. Maths is not horrible and scary, as I always thought it was. It's literally the way I have been taught. So one thing to mention here was, in my house when I was a child, my mum was the classic female, which we still got many, many people like this. They're not all female, but there's a high majority that are, of, when I had maths homework, don't ask me, ask your dad. I'm rubbish at maths. I'll help you with your literacy and so forth. So I got a message about being rubbish at maths and females being rubbish at maths. My dad would come home, we'd sit down together. He couldn't understand why I didn't get it. He wanted me to just learn it the way he'd learned it. He wanted me to just to get it right and follow procedures, and I wanted to understand it. So we'd fall out and get upset, and it was just awful, really awful. I was disappointing my dad and really moving towards being like my mom. So maybe again, you can recognize that, and the fact that that hasn't changed. We still openly hear people talking about being rubbish at maths and laughing it off and so forth. We would never ever do that with reading. You know, it's crazy, and we've got to stop that. So that was a massive change for me, that point, that 32 years old. I came back to school so excited and so much feeling like I didn't have to carry this massive weight around on my shoulders forever like I had been. And I was terrified by year 4 that these kids were going to be able to do more maths than me. And that really put me off then wanting to teach them and older children. And I asked my lovely head teacher, could I be maths subject leader? This is how mad I am. This is how I face up to things. Could I be maths subject leader? Because she was currently the maths subject leader because no one else wanted it. And I, with the understanding that she would help me to be a good maths subject leader, and she would give me the time to learn. So really, that was the changing point in my life. And that I am now 52, so 20 years later. And in those last 20 years, I was asked to go and work for the local authority. I didn't approach them, they approached me, because the way that I taught maths was beginning to be heard about, which was just strange because there's literally thousands of teachers in my local authority. So that was amazing. I also went to become not only early years, but say maths consultant for the whole of 2 local authorities. And then I eventually set up my own business. I, until COVID, was teaching teachers of maths all the way from early years through to year 6, and sometimes even into secondary and up to A level. Honestly, I kid you not. And now, since COVID, I decided that my heart is in early years. My heart is in giving practitioners like you, regardless of your role in early years, confidence, tools, clarity, support, so that you can then do your job brilliantly. So my job is to take you on a mini version of what happened to me. I went from maths hater, maths failure, absolutely, to someone who literally all day, every day wants to think about maths, because it isn't maths that was the problem here. And it wasn't me. It was the way I'd been taught, the way I'd been taught to think about maths, what I thought maths was. And I am here to take you on the beginning of an amazing journey where you can change regardless of your age, regardless of what has happened to you. And what we need to be focused on is you will then change literally thousands of children's lives. Because one thing I'll leave you with, which shocked me to my core, is that when we look at data to do with people who are imprisoned, the worst possible outcome in your life, the thing they most have in common is a failure in maths. I would have thought it would be a failure in reading academically, perhaps, or writing. They are very high up, but it is a failure in maths. And it is not that they are not mathematical. It's that when we teach maths the way that we are teaching it, people fail, and the implications on how they can, the independence they have in life and the way our lives run and how you feel about yourself. There are so many things influencing that, but that is shocking. And we need to change this. Maths is such an amazing subject. And I invite you to come on this journey with me. I invite you to be able to feel the way that I feel and be in a community where you're never alone, and you will have the biggest wow bombs ever and change your own biological children's lives and all the children that you work with. So I can't wait to start this with you.